Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite people on the planet. We like to refer to ourselves as husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films and sometimes chat about movie news. Although this week, in place of movie news, we are going to be dishing up some of our favorite moments and highlights from South by Southwest Film 2018. We'll also be reviewing Love, Simon. New film in theaters. You may have had a chance to see it over the weekend. Is it as charming as people say? Question mark. We will see. But before we unpack all of that, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host, Jim Pugliafico, who literally got home with me on one day and the next day has flown yet again away. Hey, babe, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm here. So this is going to be the highlight of my day. So, yeah, I'm in San Diego. And thanks for the great intro, babe.
Wow, I love you and I miss you. And I'm glad I at least get to look at you and interact with you through a small window until you come home.
Yeah, these Monday nights like ground my week. So that's good to know. It doesn't matter where I am as long as I got a decent internet connection. And it appears like I do. Well, we'll see how many times I get kicked
You
off
jinxed it.
Man. Oh, you spoke it into the universe, babe.
I know. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it holds up.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Hey, you've heard from him as well. Wonderful Will Lindis is here. Welcome, Will.
Hey, everyone. Brad, Jim, I feel like it feels a little wrong looking at you through the computer screen and not like in person as we're like shoving kolaches and boudin in our faces each morning. So I miss you guys.
I know.
Aw. We miss you too, and we miss Pia, the kolache lady, seeing her every morning. I unfortunately have been craving them since we got back, and there's nowhere to really get them here.
Guess what I had for breakfast this morning?
Shut the fuck up, Will. Nobody wants to hear about your kolaches. Just kidding. Hey, we also have a very special guest with us tonight who we actually got to hang out with during South by Southwest this year, which is really exciting. Matt Goad from the YouTube show Cocktail Moment, which you may have seen, is here on the Movie Bears podcast with us this week. Hey, Matt, how are you doing, and how's getting back to real life?
Good, guys. I'm glad to finally be here and, actually sit down with you guys for this. It was fun to see you last week and sleep through a movie with you guys.
Wasn't it crazy?
I've been telling everybody about that movie that was so good to get us to go to sleep.
We'll have to talk about that one later.
Nothing wrong with a cuddle pile in the middle of the movie theater as long as it stays PG-13, right?
And it's consensual cuddle pile.
Indeed.
Matt, I gotta be honest, I'm forgetting which sleep fest that you're talking about because there were a couple of them for me.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later, but
yeah, we'll get into it in a minute. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me here.
Well, we're very glad to have you with us. We've been talking about having you on the show for a while now, and this worked out so well with you going to South by and being able to sit down with us. So welcome. Excited to have you here. Also excited to have a bunch of people hanging out with us in the live chat right now. Got a lot of folks hopping on. Austin, Glenn. Hey, Austin. Glad to see you. Steve says, what up, my dudes? Oh, Steve.
Hey, my dude.
Steve. Glad to see you guys. Bobby Miller is here. He says 4 handsome bears on his screen right now. Thanks, Bobby. You're a handsome bear yourself. Glad to have you with us. Don't forget, say hi in that live chat, everybody, as we're talking about South by and Love, Simon. If you're excited about any of these films, if you got to see any of these films, I know some of them have been at other film festivals. Definitely let us know what you think. But guys, are we ready for some South by Southwest goodness?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Let's deep dive. Yeah.
All right. Then here we go. Our shared highlights from South by Southwest Film 2018. All right. So, Jim, I don't know if South by Southwest has any kind of fun jingle.
Thanks a lot for that.
But I don't know. Maybe you can find like a fair use, I don't know, Texas cowboy song or something. Who knows? Yeah, maybe there's like a Texas song about gay cowboys eating pudding that like we could use.
That's when I think about this festival in my neck of the woods, I think of gay cowboys
eating pudding.
Eating pudding. That's 100% the Austin experience.
What we
Keep
need
Austin weird.
What we need is that that South by bumper music that we saw probably over 30 times this week each.
I bet you can probably get that.
Huh.
I bet you that's just an email away.
Probably.
Well, that's what we did for Fantastic Fest. I just emailed the programmer and I was like, hey, can we use that bumper? Is that cool? And he's like, here you go. Let me work some email magic, see if I can track something down for us.
There you go.
But yeah, so we were at South by Southwest Film 2018 in Austin, Texas for 9 days, something like that.
9 days. Friday to Saturday. Will was there for 9. We were
okay. 8. It was a long fucking week, but a good one. So a lot of our listeners, we know some of them got a chance to attend South by because we ran into you guys in lines and all sorts of fun places, but a lot of folks were not able to go. And so what we thought we would do is just kind of run down some of the highlights from the festival for us, tell you about some of the films that may get picked up for distribution, things you may want to have on your radar. And I hear some music from somewhere.
No, you're not hearing music. You're hearing the fucking streetcar train that's right outside my fucking hotel room here.
Oh, is that what it fucking
Yeah, it's a fucking there's like the San Diego Transit Railway system. Like
it's got to be. We can dance
right
to
outside
it.
my room. I don't know how I'm gonna sleep tonight, but I'm not happy about it.
Man, you just got to put your earphones in and play some white noise, Jim.
Yeah, you would. Yeah. Don't even get me started about earphones.
Oh no! All right, well. Guys, let's go ahead and just break.
Anyway, you already started it. Too bad. I got these white ones, so I guess I'm all right. As long as they stay in my ears.
There you go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and just kind of crack this thing wide open. Maybe talk a little bit about the experience of being at the festival. What was it like? And let's start with Matt. Matt, was this your first time at South by? And if so, how did it go for you?
So this was my first time at South by. It was my first time in Austin. Wasn't my first time in Texas, but it was a lot of firsts. Man, I really liked it. It reminded me a lot. I go to Dragon Con every year, and a lot of this felt like Dragon Con with movies. Well, I guess movies are at Dragon Con too, but you know what I mean. Like just the general vibe in the air, especially when you were seeing like premieres of some of the smaller films that this is the first time audiences were seeing them, and a good chunk of the cast and crew were there. I remember when I saw Bloodfest on its premiere night, it felt like Dragon Con. People were just really excited, and I don't know, that's an energy that's always fun to be a part of, right? So I liked it. I wasn't expecting it to be quite as grueling, but I guess I should have known better since I've done things like this before. But yeah, I had a great time.
Now, Dragon Con, that's I assume it's just like some fantasy convention. Is that right?
So Dragon Con, the easiest way to describe it is it's sort of like Comic Con, but run by more like fans and not as, corporate heavy, And it's huge. It's like 100,000 people in downtown Atlanta Labor Day weekend, and probably 50% of them are in costumes at any given moment.
Hot as fuck.
And it depends on the year, but yeah, usually it's pretty fucking hot. But yeah, then it's 24 hours a day, Thursday through Monday. Parties go well into the night. People just don't sleep. Dragon Con's pretty crazy. But yeah, South by reminded me quite a bit of that vibe, that, energy.
So, Matt, is this I will come back good kind of energy experience for you, or?
I was there with my friend Tony, who works on the channel with me, and we kind of talked about how we really had a good time, but we'd go with a different agenda, I think. We went kind of thinking we were going to do a lot more like workshops and panels on the film track, and they were informative. They just weren't really what we thought they were going to be. They're very like industry driven for people that want to work in the studio system, and we don't really want to do that, at least right now. So I think if I go back, it would definitely be specifically to see more movies, because I saw probably 7 movies, I think, over the week, which is not, it sounds like a lot, but I mean, I think Will told me at one point he saw 7 a day, right? Something like that.
Close.
I hit it. I think I hit a 7 on one of the days, or at least was aiming for it. But no, not every day. No. Oh my God, I'd be dead.
Right. Well, I mean, even the 7 I saw felt like a lot, you know? So I would go again with the idea of I'm just going to see more movies.
Yeah, because it's not just, I mean, not just seeing the movies, but it's like you've got to go to different venues, perhaps. Well, first of all, you got to get into the city. That's, that can be a hassle if you're not staying downtown. You got to be standing.
Austin's, like, roads were all closed downtown. I don't know if that's normal for Austin, but just getting around the city was a nightmare.
Yeah. And then, it's standing in lines to get into screenings. To make sure you can get a seat, even with badge or whatever, you gotta. There is a chance you can get shut out of some screenings. Now we didn't. I don't think any of us got shut out of screenings when we were there on time, which was great. And that's what I love about South by is that, pretty much know that if you show up on time when you're supposed to, and that's not always like 2 or 3 hours ahead. It's
right.
At least 30 or 45 minutes ahead, you're probably going to get in if you paid, for a badge. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
It'll beat you down, even 7 movies, like you said.
One of the things that's especially neat seeing with the festival this year, and granted, we stayed, the 3 of us, we stayed on the film track. We watched movie after movie after movie because, hey, we're a film review podcast. That's what we're going to do, right? But South by is really focused this year on, instead of being a bunch of conferences that are happening at the same time, film, music, and interactive as separate adjacent festivals, they've really focused this year on becoming one conference, and our badges give us access to all of them, just in some cases primary access, in some cases secondary access. Right. And so what's so neat about this festival is, from any perspective of entertainment, you can come here and have sort of a choose your own adventure experience. You can sit in on those panels. You can go to world premieres. You can check out some cool indie films that may never see the light of day. And that's great because you're getting this very singular experience at this festival. You may be able to check some of your new favorite bands that you've never heard of before playing at a venue down the street. Have a brunch with some amazing filmmakers. You can go check out your favorite video game at the interactive booth. All of these things are happening at the exact same time, and it's just a matter of figuring out how you want to do it. Of course, for me, it was, I want to be in that dark room. I want that silver screen. I want that narrative or documentary just like streaming into my eyes. But I did appreciate just that I had those options available to me.
I think the main thing that you have to do when you're trying to surmount a Herculean task, like all these different things you can do at South by, is just to figure out how to clone yourself and be all the places you want to be at the same time. Like, it's such a Sophie's choice sometimes, because some of the films here at the festival, we're not at the festival anymore, but some of the films that were at the festival may never even get picked up for distribution. They may never ever be seen. And so it's like, you may have 2 movies that you really want to see, and it's like a Sophie's choice. Like, oh my God, what if neither of these movies ever comes out? This is my only chance to see it. How do I make this choice based on a description? It's rough. And, I had to work during the week, so I didn't get to see as many movies. But for Will and Jim, tell us a little bit about your thought process when it comes to making that Sophie's choice. How do you figure out which one gets to take away the cake in terms of your express pass?
Well, I mean, Will and I, first of all, to answer the question, did I get to see every single movie I wanted to see? No, not really. And that never happens any year. However, the festival, attending the festival and seeing a lot of films requires some amount of planning, in some cases, a few days ahead. Because almost every film, with the exception of like the opening night, film and the closing night film, typically play 2 or 3 times during the week in different slots and at different venues. So you've got the whole schedule in front of you, and you're just trying to line up your available viewing slots to see as many of the movies you want to see, in a kind of an efficient manner. Like, you don't want to be jumping across town 4 times in a day. You may want to sit at one venue for the morning and then jump in the afternoon over to another venue, and that's kind of the way we do it. I know Will and I are more on the like strategic planning or tactical planning, I guess we could say, and we kind of lay that stuff out, and that requires a little bit of work. But I mean, it pays off in that you can see almost everything you want to see. And yeah, there has to be a time where you say, you know what, I'm not going to see this movie. And sometimes it's a movie that might be being so. Like, if there's a movie that's going to be distributed in the next month or so, and it's going to be a wide release, may or may not put as much emphasis on seeing that at the festival because it's going to come out later.
Unless Steven Spielberg's going to be there.
Unless Steven Spielberg is there. We'll get to that later, too. But yes, so some of them, like, Isle of Dogs is the new Wes Anderson movie. That was the closing night film. Now, I didn't happen to be there for closing night, but if I was and that was opposite something else, maybe I might not have chosen that. But because it's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks here, so. But yeah, Will, did I kind of cover it?
I think so. I think that the important thing to really note here is that I don't think there's a wrong answer for how you handle a festival like this, because there are so many different movies that have been selected, and unless you've already seen them, you don't know what you're going to like until you see them. And if you've already seen them, it defeats the purpose. So there are going to be some movies that you're going to find here that were never on your radar at all. And you stumble into the theater because it happens to be at a convenient time. I've got a couple of hours until that other movie I really want to watch happens. So I'll pick this one out instead, and boom, you've just found your new favorite film of the festival by accident. Or that one movie you've been really looking forward to, you sit down with it, and man, it wasn't everything that you wanted it to be. So I think that, Jim, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of strategy involved, because I would much rather spend time in the theater than on the shuttles kind of being carted back and forth between venues. So sometimes that means saying, okay, I'm going to spend some time at this venue so I have less travel time in between, which means I can see more things. Sometimes it means having those decisions, is this going to have distribution? Is this not? And if it does have distribution, is it going to be a released in a week film, or is it going to be released in like 6 months? Because seeing something a week early versus something 6 months early is different. What members of the cast and crew are going to be present? All of these things go into the stew, and no matter what you end up selecting, it's not a bad choice. I say every year, one of the best things that South by Southwest has going for it is, I think for a lot of the different festivals that I've seen or heard from, it's got one of the strongest documentary programming lineups. If I keep threatening, like, there's going to be some year where I just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to do nothing but the documentaries at South by, and I'll have a great time with it, because the average documentary that plays there is really solid. I know people who my friend George, he goes and he sees the documentary competition and the narrative competition programs, and he tries to see all of those programs, which are usually not the headliners. Those are the ones in that usually first filmmaker or competitive category. And that's his focus. And that's the joy that he experiences from the program. So yeah, this is a choose your own adventure where every outcome is a positive one.
And it's interesting too, because I think different things are important to different people for different reasons. Like, I know for me, I really wanted to see Ready Player One. A, because I fucking love the book. B, yeah, I know the movie's coming out in a couple weeks, but like, Spielberg and the cast were going to be there was the buzz ahead of the film. We didn't necessarily know for sure, but we were like, it definitely sounds like that's the case. And so sometimes you sort of gamble a little bit. And sure enough, like, we stood in line, we got into Ready Player One, and Spielberg was there for the Q&A after the film, which was amazing to hear this incredible, career director talk about this project and, have a back and forth conversation with Ernest Cline, author of the book. And yes, we could go see Ready Player One in a couple weeks, but we wouldn't be able to see that amazing Q&A and be like 20 feet from Steven Spielberg. So, you know, that's a big part of it for me sometimes. It's like, all right, what talent is the movie bringing with it? Who's going to be there? Even if we don't know for sure, is it worth taking that gamble to go see, you know, this movie that, you know, has people I could potentially be able to see very close up, like getting Mark Hamill's sweat on me, Luke Skywalker. It's just one of those things, you know what I mean? But to some people, that's not important at all. Some people are like, I don't care who's here with this film. I am just interested in, you know, pure documentaries or pure narrative. They don't stay for the Q&As at all because they're off to the next movie. So it really is one big giant, like, turn to page 49 if you want A, B, C, D.
But it's not like one of those really crappy choose your own adventures where it's like when you turn to page 49, like a monster with the space ray comes out and shoots you and you have to turn back. Like, I don't know if you ever read those as a kid, but like every choose your own adventure was like just riddled with like terror and torment. But this one's riddled with like great movies and wonderful talent and new experiences and new friends that you just met in line. Like it truly is like this. It's like summer camp for movies.
Yeah, and that's, Will, you just hit on something that I like to mention, and it really is kind of an unsung highlight of mine at these film festivals, is talking with people you don't know and getting to meet people, other film fans that are waiting in line with you, and talking like about some of the movies they saw and getting their viewpoint. Like, hey, what have you seen at the festival that's really like knocked you back? And it may be a film that you weren't even considering seeing, but now it kind of jumps up on your preference list as maybe I'll make room to see this because a lot of people are talking about this movie, and those can be great experiences too. I mean, that's another way you discover good films, and there were a few good ones that we discovered this year, you know. Even on top of the big ones like Ready Player One and you know, the Director and the Jedi, which we saw.
And I know we're going to do another South by episode. It's going to be a bonus episode. We'll have a lot more room to breathe and think and talk about all of these amazing and some maybe not so amazing films we saw. But would love to maybe hear some highlights, maybe one or two films from you know, each person that you loved seeing, maybe why. Doesn't have to be long, drawn out explanations, but just kind of a brief, like, what did you dig about the films and why? Matt, would love to start with you. I know you said you got to see 7. Are there a couple of those films that just really stood out to you as highlights?
Absolutely. Actually, there were 2 exactly that I really have enjoyed telling people about. The first was called The Breaker-Uppers. It's a film from New Zealand, and it's a lot of the same like producing team that did Hunt for the Wilder People, which is one of my favorite movies of recent time. The 2 women that wrote, directed, and starred in it came up on stage at the beginning of the film to introduce it, and they were hilarious. And I looked at my friend that was with me, and I'm like, God, they're so funny. Like, I could watch them for like an hour and a half. And turns out they were the star. I didn't know anything about the movie going in, which is great. That's a great way to see a movie. And they were absolutely hilarious. Breaker-Uppers, the very simple version of the story is these 2 women have set up a company and you can hire them to break up your relationship for you. So like if you're having trouble breaking up with your significant other, they come up with like some crazy concoction of a story and execute. It's absolutely hilarious.
They execute somebody?
Well, no, not quite. But it's funny you say that because one of the ways that they do a breakup is stage your death for you. Like it's absolutely hilarious. And the 2 women, they're like New Zealand's Kristen Wiig and Tina Fey. They have pitch perfect comedic timing. Yeah, I can't recommend Breaker-Uppers enough. I really hope it gets a theatrical run in the States because it's absolutely worth seeing. The other one I saw that I really enjoyed was called Brother's Nest. No lie, I totally went to go see it because the 2 main characters looked really cute. They're 2 big, bearish dudes. Turns out they're actual brothers in real life, and one of them's the writer-director. Or no, he's the director. someone else wrote it. Anyways, so I totally went to see it. Thought they were cute, and it said dark comedy, and dark comedy is right up my alley. And I was not disappointed. It was exceptionally dark. It was a very dark movie. Again, the short version is it's two brothers that are attempting to murder their stepfather because they want to make sure that when their mom dies, they get the house and the land and all of that. So, and of course, they're bad at it. They've never murdered anyone before. They don't know what they're doing. But yeah, and that one's from Australia. So for me, Australia and New Zealand really killed it at South by this year for me.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. Yeah.
I was attracted to that movie for the same reasons you were.
It did not disappoint in that regard, Jim.
I enjoyed it quite a lot. My only beef with the movie was that we didn't get to see them shirtless at all. So
it didn't even happen once, and there was like so many opportunities that it could have been
right. I know.
I mentioned just the name of that film to my friends who are also in the bear community from Australia, and they immediately said, "Oh, you saw it because of like without even blinking, they knew who the two actors were, and were like, yeah, we all lust over them here." So,
well, the actor that plays the younger brother, not the director, but the other actor, I've actually seen in quite a few things. He was in The Dressmaker. He was in a couple of things, so I was just like, I'm on board. He's cute. Mm-hmm. I can stare at him for an hour and a half.
Nice. Well, glad to hear that Australia and New Zealand represented so well for you, Matt. Jim, what about you? What were a couple films that were standouts for you?
Oh, boy, there's just so many. I'm going to hit on a couple that I think people are going to get to see pretty quickly. A little horror film from, help me out with the name here, John, A Quiet Place.
John Krasinski.
Krasinski, starring himself and Emily Blunt. Kind of a horror thriller movie about this. There's not a lot of backstory, but this family is trying to survive in what looks like the near future or current day in an area or maybe in the U.S. that's been besieged by some kind of alien creature that is blind but has super sensitive hearing, and so they must at all times be quiet. They really can't talk, can't make noise, and they're trying to survive, raise a family in this country without making any noise. And it's the film is really good, really scary in parts. Because it focuses on sound, obviously its sound design is important, and I think that is a standout in this movie. I think that's going to be released. So I enjoyed that one a lot. That was, I think, the opening night film. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then the documentary "Won't You Be My Neighbor," which is the documentary about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, as we know, in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and really focuses on the guy and how he created Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, what his philosophies were towards children's education and the way children are brought up. It was really a wonderful documentary. Like, I knew it was going to be something special because, you know, Fred Rogers was a special kind of guy. And it was just fascinating to get to see a little bit more about him and the stuff they created. And all I know is that when I got out of that movie, I wanted a Daniel the Striped Tiger like T-shirt. Like, I need to get one of those, right? Meow meow. You know, like one of those with Daniel on it. And yeah, Daniel. But it was great, and it's called "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And I don't know when it's going to be released, but I'm guessing we'll see that. It may get a short theatrical run, but I'm expecting we'll see that before too long in video on demand.
Yeah, Focus Features has that one, and it's coming out on June 8th. So it's, I mean, not too far off. And Focus should have, granted, it's a documentary, so you're probably not going to see it at your local Cinema 4 or something like that. But but it will get, it is Focus, so it is going to get some distribution. People are going to get a chance to see it.
But a lot of these are already out on iTunes. I was surprised when I came back from Austin and just loaded up iTunes, and I'm like, wait a minute, I could have seen that days ago at the festival.
Right. Yeah, I saw one. It's funny because you mentioned that, because one of the documentaries I saw was called "Take Your Pills," and it was about the Adderall and Ritalin problem that's going on in this country now with overprescription or over medication, and that's currently on Netflix right now. I was just thumbing through it, and I'm like, oh, there it is. That's the one I just saw. So,
how about that?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, at least at the festival, you typically get to see it with, the director, writer, members of the cast and crew, and you get some really cool Q&As that come about as a result.
Right. And you get to see it on the big screen.
Yeah, I was going to say, seeing it in a theater with a bunch of people and like sharing their energy is a very different experience than like watching it on your laptop in your bed or something. So I always would rather see it in theaters, right?
Absolutely.
Man after my own heart. Yes.
So, Will, what about you? What were a couple films that were like the true standouts for you?
Yeah, Jim mentioned one of them. I think Won't You Be My Neighbor is one of the best documentaries I've seen in a while. Interestingly enough, the only reason I knew June 8th off the top of my head is because it shares a release date with my other perfect film of the festival, and that's Hereditary, also coming out on June 8th. So that's going to be an amazing day, guys. Hereditary is the new horror movie by A24. It was my #1 film coming into the festival, and it was my #1 film coming out of it, too. It stars Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne in this sort of creepy, slow burn, but not too slow, supernatural flick about this family that's going through this occurrence. And I really don't want to, I spoke in a lot of vague terms there because I don't want to rob you of just what a delightful / soul crushing / you will never sleep again experience that this film is. So I won't give you those details, but just trust me. Like I started this movie at midnight after a long day. I was tired. And after those first few scenes, I was like, wide-eyed, staring at the screen. Then when I got home after 3 a.m., and let me tell you, it took me a little bit to fall asleep. This movie got underneath my skin and stayed there. Outside of that, I think one of the things that I really appreciated so much this year was just the amount of queer and LGBTQ content that was at the festival. There are a lot of those films, some of which I know we'll be talking about with some of the filmmakers in another special episode that will be coming out later. But one that I did want to draw attention to is a movie called 1985, which is this beautiful movie by Yin Tan, who's done some things with South by Southwest before. It's this drama, all done in black and white, about this this man. He's in the closet, his family doesn't know that he's gay, and he goes back home for the holidays, and he also has HIV. And so he's struggling with how to disclose, basically come out on both of these things to his family, while also dealing with all of those interpersonal relationships. It's a small film. It doesn't have a lot of like whiz bang, but it doesn't need it because it's very sincere. Plus, you've got Virginia Madsen and Michael Chiklis turning in some pretty solid performances as the parents. So this one, I'm not as sure on when and where on distribution, but keep an eye out for 1985. It's really, really good.
So I really liked 1985. I had some technical issues with the movie, but I thought overall it had a good story, good pacing. The lead is actually, I don't remember his name right now, it's escaping me, but he's the Riddler. He's Nigma from Gotham on right now. And he's really, really, really good.
He's almost unrecognizable in the two different roles. Like, you don't watch this and go like, that's the Riddler. And you don't watch the Riddler and go like, oh, that's the guy from 1985. Like, right. That's the mark of a good performance.
Totally agree. I'm glad I caught that one. Because you're right. I don't know if that one's, I mean, it looks like it's shot on like 16 millimeter black and white film stock. I don't know if it's going to, be appealing enough to get a wide release.
Yeah. Black and white family drama is like movie shorthand for direct
to iTunes.
Like
it may have life
commercial death.
It may have life on Netflix. Every so often, one of these, like every year, there's like one black and white like film, whether it be Francis Ha or Computer Chess or Embrace of the Serpent, that's just like ends up getting like, you know, making a baby splash, but then kind of coming to life on Netflix and VOD streaming. I don't know that this is that film, but like I would hope that, you know, if there is a trajectory for this film, it might be that, and I would like to see that. I'd like to see this film do well. I'd like to see Yin Ten make more movies. I want to see what else he can bring to the table.
I totally agree.
How about you, Brad?
Oh gosh, for me, there's so many choices. I think the gosh, it's like stalling in my mind every time I try to start. All right, I'm just going to pick one and go with it. I know we're going to do another bonus episode, but I have a complicated relationship with the new Star Wars movies, guys. I really do. I really like The Force Awakens, and I was really excited for The Last Jedi. But as production was ramping up on that, you know, there was this whole like schism that developed when Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, basically tweeted and Facebooked out that he was not happy with the direction of Luke Skywalker in the film, that he really disagreed fundamentally with director Rian Johnson's take on the character, and that he was, you know, not super happy or excited to be part of the project. And Luke Skywalker, being one of my all-time favorite characters and loving Mark Hamill as an actor, he's been in so many wonderful things. He is my Joker for all time. Going into The Last Jedi, I was just like, oh man, like what is going to happen here? And, you know, potential spoilers for Last Jedi. I don't know anyone who hasn't seen it yet at this point. You know, Luke really takes a very different direction. He was the hero of the original trilogy, and this time he's this, you know, sad old man who's closed himself off from the Force, and he doesn't want to teach Rey, and he's like this reluctant mentor, and that really didn't work very well for me in the film. And coming out of that movie, I was just wrestling so much with like, God, why did they take this direction with Luke and take this thing that I loved and turn it into something that I really just couldn't get behind? And so there's a lot of buildup, but I promise the payoff is coming. We got a chance to see a documentary at South by called The Director and the Jedi. And this documentary is actually available for you to watch right now as part of the special or extra features if you buy the video on demand release of The Last Jedi. The DVD and Blu-ray is coming out too. But they screened this documentary, and Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill were both on hand for the Q&A afterward. And guys, that Q&A helped me make my peace with The Last Jedi and Rian Johnson and the direction he decided to take with Luke. I don't think I really understood it. And I've seen the movie like 3 times already, but like hearing he and Mark Hamill go back and forth about sort of that disagreement, how they made their peace with each other, why Rian Johnson made these choices for Luke. I felt like hearing Mark Hamill talk through his own mental process of like, I didn't initially agree with it, but like the more I thought about it, the more I sort of came around to that way of thinking. And it was really interesting for me to hear Mark Hamill talk about like how actors aren't the chefs. They're really just an ingredient. Like they serve a role. It isn't their job to make the meal. Their job is to be an ingredient in that meal. And they don't always see what the final product is going to be like until it's there. So it was a really incredibly special experience for me to be on hand and see Mark Hamill and Rian Johnson kind of talk through this. It was almost like therapy on stage. I don't know if you guys got that feeling at all, Jim and Will. I know you were there.
Oh, yeah.
But it was pretty incredible to see them talk that through.
I think what was so neat about it was I think you and I got a similar thing out of the film, of similar catharsis, a similar whatever from this documentary and from the Q&A after it, while also going into the film with very different, because I know like we're on different pages on the
right.
on Last Jedi. I think that it's one of, if not the best of the Star Wars movies, and you were at a different place on it. But we both walked out of it finding things that helped invigorate us and energize us and help us understand different aspects of it. Plus, outside of all of that, they do a lot of showing of just like some of the creatures in this. And like, I knew that these were mostly practical effects creatures, only like lightly touched up with CGI, as opposed to like the prequel trilogy, which was all green screen and computers and stuff. But watching the puppet work, watching them build the things, watching the people in costumes during the different scenes, just reminded me of just like how magical film is. Like, just how much work and how much creativity goes into creating these scenes that we otherwise take for granted.
Yeah, I mean, like, it might be a minor spoiler for the documentary, but Sea Cow gets a lot of screen time.
Oh, Sea Cow.
All about that green milk.
You got it.
Oh, man. Yeah, so that was a big highlight for me. The other one, Ready Player One, we mentioned it already. I don't know if we're going to talk about it in our bonus episode, guys. I also really want to talk about Transmilitary. So this is like one of those like Sophie's choices. Let's just talk about Transmilitary for a second. So we had a chance to go to the Aglyph filmmaker brunch, and we got a really cool opportunity to sit down with some of the filmmakers behind some of the films at the festival, and the team from Transmilitary that was there. You know, I didn't know much about the movie going in, but their excitement for the film made me excited. And, you know, of course, you can read in the schedule the premise of the movie or whatnot. But you guys know documentaries are not my wheelhouse. Like, if there are two genres of movies that I could like get rid of forever and be okay, it's documentaries and comedies, which I know. I see the face you're making, Matt. I do. But they're just typically not my thing. But guys, Transmilitary was fucking amazing. This documentary follows a few different people who've been involved in the armed forces who identify as trans, at least privately, if not publicly at one point. And it sort of follows the struggle of, you know, trans people in the armed services, what they go through, you know, and sort of the journey, I guess, over the last 5 or 6 years, especially as it's banned, then it's not banned, then it is banned again, but they're not enforcing it. It was, I don't know. I think for people who don't really understand what trans is, and aren't really keyed into like what that world is about and what these amazing folks go through, this documentary should be absolutely required watching in every sense of the word. It was phenomenal.
Seconded. I really enjoyed that, and getting a chance. I forget her last name, but Fiona, I think, was one of the directors of that, and got to talk to her, and she was really, like you said, she was really excited. I think we saw the film like within 2 hours of talking to her. We talked to her in the morning, and then like at 12:30 was the screening. But yeah, I mean, it's so, you know, and I'm not going to get political, but it just highlights a lot of the issues that we're currently having. This is just one of them where we've made so much progress in this area over the last, maybe the last administration. Let's just say that, the last couple administrations, and then just in the last year, things have kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Regressed. In that regard, and it's really frustrating for these people who've given their lives potentially to serve their country, and they're not getting equal opportunity to be who they are in the armed forces. So it's called Transmilitary. This is a doc I think you'll probably see pop up on something like Netflix somewhere down the road.
Yeah, one of my weaknesses is trans docs. We end up screening a lot of them for Aglyph, and they're always compelling stories. And I say that having watched quite a few and already having kind of like a soft spot for this type of story. This is an especially good one of those. Like, this is one that I think stands out kind of above the pack, and is it's a good gateway drug. Like, if you are like you mentioned, Brad, if you're someone who's not a documentary person, I think you'll still have a good time with this one. If you don't know much about the trans experience, I think the fact that this is really tied to that link between trans and military and kind of the legalities around it. I feel like there's a lot that you can sort of kind of like dig your claws into and just sort of like, okay, I get this specific issue a little bit more and let me expand out. So yeah, this is a very accessible film. It's a very informative film. It's a very emotional film. And yeah, I'm hoping that it gets, again, like these types of documentaries aren't going to be like, you know, playing at your local Cinemark, but I think that there is a good possibility for life on VOD for this one.
Agreed. And we've got a pretty amazing interview with Fiona Dawson. That'll be coming out. We do have a special episode with all of the interviews that we did at the A-Glyph Filmmaker Brunch. If you're wondering what the heck is A-Glyph and what was the Filmmaker Brunch all about, definitely tune into that episode. That may, in fact, be coming out before this episode comes out this week. It's edited and in the can, but we gotta collect some stuff for the show notes and put it up. So if you've listened to it already before you listen to this episode, you may be like, did I hop in a DeLorean? Did I time travel? It's relative to your experience. How about that? So, well, guys, listen, we still have a movie to review, and we're almost an hour in. For anyone out there who may be considering going to South by Southwest, there is obviously cost involved, but just real quick, round robin style, Matt, let's start with you. What do you think the number one reason to make that financial leap or make that travel leap is regarding South by?
Oh, man. I got to say, the only way I can really like wholeheartedly recommend South by is if you just really, really love movies. Like, you kind of have to, I think, to justify the badge price, because it's not a cheap badge at all. But it was worth it to get to like meet some of these filmmakers, you know, before, during, and after watching what they've worked on, and get to just see behind the curtain a little bit, their process and their inspiration. And I mean, there's, like you said, kind of earlier in the podcast, there's other things. Like I ended up using, I had a film badge, but I ended up doing some of the interactive stuff because a lot of the podcasting panels were on the interactive track or festival or however you want to say it. And I found those to be actually a lot more interesting than most of the film workshops and panels that I went to. So it's just, I mean, as with most things like this, or I know I keep talking about Dragon Con, it's kind of what you make of it. Like, go in ready to be exhausted, right? But, you know, you can find something. There's too much to do to not find something to do, you know?
There you go. I love it. Jim, how about you?
For me, I just went through all the reasons in my head, but number one is not just seeing movies, because we see a lot of movies at the local Cineplex, and that's fine. But seeing movies in this environment where everybody is there to see movies and talk about movies, it just, to me, like, makes the experience all that much more special. Like I said, you know, and getting to talk to some of these people, make new friends online. It's like a community really that comes together for a week. And, you know, like almost not people, you know, but just kind of like that shared interest and that shared passion for movies is all around you, and you're immersed in it. And that's what I love about it.
Very, very true. Will, how about you?
I mean, yeah, it's the movies, and specifically it's the experience of absorbing them all. I think there's something sort of magical that happens around day 5 or 6 of this festival, and it's a good thing. No, because day 2, day 3, you get tired. You get really tired really easily. Like, you've seen a bunch of movies and you're exhausted, but somewhere around day 5, like, your body changes, your mind changes, your body chemistry changes. You are no longer like a human being who goes to work and has relationships and, you know, sleeps on a normal, but you are now a movie watching machine. Movies are your new life. And there's this weird stamina. It's almost like a runner's high that you get. Anyone who's done a lot of jogging will, you know, that runner's high kicks in like right around the time that you're about to just pass out dying dead from your jog. then you get that rush of endorphins and you can just keep going. You get that at this festival. You get that as you're watching that film you didn't know that you were going to love and now love. As you're rushing to the next theater, you almost think like, I don't want to go back to the real world because this is my new normal and I want this to be my new normal. And you can't experience that just watching a bunch of shows on Netflix. You can only experience that in the theater with new and creative and visionary films on the screen in front of you, surrounded by people who are just going apeshit for the same films that you are.
Pretty huge.
What about for you, Brad?
You know, this kind of lines up with Bobby Miller's question in the chat. Bobby says, you know, for a first timer, what would you do? And, you know, for me, I think my approach to the festival is a little different than other people's. Will and Jim, I know to some degree before the festival, you guys have got your like Minority Report screens up. You like move in movies from one screen to another and figuring out your path. And for me, I just kind of like open the book and I'm like, what looks interesting? What sounds interesting that day? So Bobby, to your question, I mean, I would just say, get a badge, open the book, and just read the descriptions. Whatever sounds interesting, go see. Maybe the first day, check out the opening film. Second day, maybe pick 2 or 3 movies that sound fairly interesting, fairly good. Just be careful not to overload yourself in the first couple days, because I think that's what happens sometimes. People are like, oh my God, I'm at this film festival. I have to see everything. I'm going to see 6 movies today. And 2 days into the festival, they're exhausted. They're whooped. They crashed out. And then, you know, they maybe lose a lot of their drive and enthusiasm. So pick what's interesting, but pace yourself.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, yeah, like I know my thing was the whole like binging and being immersed. And that's because I've done now like 15 of these film festivals. And so I have a different stamina for it just because this is something that I've done a lot of. My very first one, let me tell you, I hit the wall really freaking hard at the end of it. And I was just like glazed over. My friend was sending me like pictures of like kittens just because, and granted, it was at a genre film festival. So it's just like, I've seen so many murders. I'm so depressed right now. So he's like, here's a pictures of kittens. Here's a bunny. Like, this will calm you down. But Brad, you actually absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think it's sort of like you treat one of these things like a marathon and not like a sprint. Go to the festival, find a thing that you like, pace yourself, and if you've got energy for more, do a thing. If you've got energy for more, do a thing. If you're feeling a little bit tired, take a break. If you're feeling a little bit hungry, make sure you get some food, because it's really easy to skip nutrition and to skip sleep at these things. And you might hit that day where you're just like, you know what? I want to go balls to the wall and really go deep with it. And then, yeah, do that. But do so at a pace that's deliberate, not at my pace or Brad's pace or Jim's pace. You have to figure out what your pace is and do that pace.
Plus, there's the added benefit, Bobby or anyone else who's listening, who may be thinking about going next year, we'll be there. So if you ever want to hang out with us and see some movies, definitely would love to do that. So definitely let us know if you're thinking about going. You know, we were able to sync up with you, Matt, and that was awesome to see some films with you and get a chance to hang out. That's one of the magic things about South by is just the amazing people that come in and create this wonderful shared experience. So Matt, glad you were there, and Jim and Will, I'm so glad that we got to experience this together. I want to close out this segment with just a giant thank you to Janet Pearson and all of the other amazing volunteers who work so tirelessly to put this program together to help make this festival possible. The guys are clapping. You may not see it because the camera focuses on whoever's talking. Matt, clap again if you don't mind. I'll focus on you. Yeah, woo! These volunteers just put in so many hours and so much hard work to make this happen. So, you know, we really appreciate everyone involved in South by for having us out and creating such an amazing experience. So, thank you.
Yeah, it runs so astoundingly smoothly. Like, I'm amazed every year by how smoothly it goes. Like, I don't know how many. There's 100 and something movies there that all play like multiple times in the week. So I don't know how many total screenings they have, but it's insane at like, you know, at like there were at least like 7 or 8 different venues. It's an amazing logistical undertaking that they do, and they just make it so easy to do what we do, is to just go in and enjoy the movies.
And with that, there's this card that shows up before every single movie. It says like, it plays the bumper. It says, silence your phones. But there's this card that pops up right before each film that says, thank you to our volunteers. And you've got all of these. And as soon as it pops up, everyone in the audience gives that huge round of applause, because you've got all of these people that are basically running the badge lines and making sure that people are in the right place. And they're doing so essentially for free. These are people that are, they'll get to kind of experience part of the festival as a result of volunteering. But it's through these volunteers and the people that manage the volunteers and the people that do the programming and the theater managers and all of these people working in sync that this thing even is able to happen. And it happens so smoothly every year. So a big thank you to everyone involved.
Absolutely. And I have a cat on my shoulder. Say hello, Kira. She's not interested in being
hello, Mr. Bond.
She's
$1 million.
She's roaming around the house looking for Jim, who of course is not here right now. But anyway, hi Kira. Uptown. We have a movie to discuss, guys.
Yes, Tomb Raider. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jim. Sorry to disappoint you.
Fuck yeah.
No pointy boobs.
Oops.
We're going to go ahead and transition into our discussion of Love, Simon. I know it is very late for you, Will, and you, Matt. So if it's an abbreviated review, that is 100% okay. We took a lot of time for South by. But guys, we're going to talk about
tonight.
What's that?
I thought we were talking about Love Actually tonight.
Oh, whoops. Wrong Love, movie.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, Simon.
Right. So we're going to talk about
Simon.
this. We're going to chat about Love, Simon, spoiler-free, for probably a few minutes. We'll give you some quick impressions, whether or not we think it's worth seeing in theaters, renting, skipping, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we open up spoilers. But here we go, our discussion of Love, Simon. All right, so Will, if you don't mind, give us a very brief setup for this film, and is this worth checking out? What do you think?
Yeah, so Love, Simon is basically it's a coming of age, high school aged romantic comedy style film about this kid named Simon. He's a senior in high school, and he's keeping this huge secret from his family, his friends, and from everyone at school. See, Simon is gay. The thing is, what? Spoiler alert. So Simon is coming to grips with this in the midst of all of these relationships, while also dealing with the fact that he, through very special circumstances, meets someone that he starts to develop a close relationship with, while also having to deal with the fact that that secret of his is, it very could get leaked out to all the people that he loves. So one of the things that I absolutely love about this film is, and bear with me on this, this is an incredibly ordinary film, and I love, love, love the fact that it is. What I mean by that is, this is a heartfelt movie. It's very sweet. I think that it has, it's very charming. The laughs are good. The characters are fun. And I think a lot of the experiences feel very familiar to a lot of us in the gay community who have had to experience coming out, whether on our terms, other people's terms, through family, through classmates, just this entire thing that Simon goes through. But this film is presented in the exact same way. Like we've seen queer coming out stories before, but a lot of times those are in the lens of like prestige indie dramas, right? We think like the last two prominent gay movies that we've talked about have been Moonlight and Call Me by Your Name, probably are the two biggies, right? This movie feels a lot like a ton of those different kind of young adult era rom-coms that are usually geared more towards like, you know, straight white kids falling in love. But the thing is that the fact that this is such an ordinary, traditional kind of structured rom-com, but it's about gay culture, I think that says quite a bit about where we're at here in 2018, that we're not just stuck to the fringes of the art house cinema. We have the equivalent of a mainstream rom-com with Jennifer Garner and Josh Duhamel in it, that the average, like, you know, like the average person can go see. Like, you're not going to have to go hunt this thing down. This thing is playing in theaters, and while it didn't quite make, like, you know, a couple of the big blockbusters did overpower it, rom-coms very rarely beat like the tentpole movies when it comes to money. But I sat there with a gay couple to my left, just holding hands and smiling through it, and these two straight girls to my right who were just all the way through it. And it was such a magical experience because I felt like this thing that I experienced growing up, and a lot of us experienced growing up, is now more accessible. I feel like we are, all of us, at least in terms of how we're presented in mainstream media, I think we're coming out of a closet, and that's a cool thing. So Love, Simon is definitely worth watching. It's not going to like set the world on fire in terms of like being complete and unique in terms of its storytelling techniques or its acting, any of those things. It's good at all of those things. But the fact that it tells this particular story in this particular way is so damn refreshing.
All right. One big old recommend from Will. Matt, how about you?
So I really liked it a lot. I did not like the first trailer. It felt a little saccharine and, I don't know, cheesy to me. But the second trailer kind of convinced me to give it a go, and I'm glad I did. I really liked it. Will's right. It's not a particularly like groundbreaking movie. It reminds me quite a bit of like Easy A or like one of those other like rom-coms that are good. You know, they're nothing mind-blowing, but they're really good. And yeah, I had a good time. The theater I saw it in was about half full, and definitely a lot of family in the theater, and it was just nice. I definitely say, like, see it in theaters because you get that kind of family experience of seeing it with your fellow gays. And yeah, I don't want to say much more until we talk in spoiler territory, but I enjoyed it. Thumbs up. I was down.
All right, 2 recommends. Jim, is the train gonna keep rolling? How did it come down for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie too. I was a little worried going into this. It looked like, I mean, there's so many places where these movies can really fall into, you know, like too familiar territory and become just simply retreads. And yes, this movie is not. I see it on the posters and stuff, like how it's a groundbreaking movie, and yeah, I agree with Matt. I don't think it is. It really does. It is groundbreaking in most ways, except I think this movie kind of brings the gay coming out experience as a teenager, which I never really had. I came out later in life. Kind of, and this sounds bad, but I mean, I think it's going to make it palatable and, normalizes it for like the mainstream moviegoer. Like, it doesn't make a huge, yes, the character's gay. We see this throughout the movie. But it's not, it's not a, how do I put this? If you didn't know that he was gay, he's just like a normal, he's just like everybody else. But
he only says it 15 times in the movie.
No, he does. But he I don't know. It's strange how the movie handles it. I think it handles it very well. I also like the central conceit of the movie. It's kind of a mystery. This movie has a central mystery, I think, that keeps a lot of people interested and adds a level to that normal rom-com all those rom-com tropes that this movie does have. It has a lot of them. It has it has the person that's in love with the central character, but that love will always be unrequited, and without spoiling too much, yes, I love the movie, and I just hope that young people are going to go see this movie, so they can maybe the students or the teenagers who maybe are uncomfortable with themselves being gay, or they know somebody in school who's happens to be gay. This may kind of close that gap a little bit between them and queer folks at school. So I still had a good time with the movie. There were enough laughs in it. It's not edgy. I wouldn't say it's edgy, but I think it handles its material very well.
It's interesting. So 3 recommends in a row. Spoiler alert, it's also a recommend for me. But Jim, it's interesting that you mentioned sort of the social impact that it might have. So I can't go in too deeply about what I do for work, but I have a chance to interact with young people. And at work today, I had mentioned that I saw Love, Simon last night. And, in front of a whole bunch of other people, this guy says, "Oh my God, I saw Love, Simon too. And it was awesome." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's great. We both saw the same movie." And this is a guy who is very masculine. And when he then announced to everybody that the movie gave him the courage to come out to us right in that moment, we had a crazy special moment today.
Oh my God.
Huge bonding experience. It probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't said that I had seen Love, Simon. And he was like, "Guys, this movie has made me rethink my life and made me rethink keeping people at an arm's distance." And he's like, "I want you all to be the first to know that this is me and this is who I am. And this movie helped me come to terms with that." Everybody was crying. I had tissues, for myself. Unfortunately, I couldn't hand them out because it was virtual, but it was a pretty special experience. And so, you see films like Call Me By Your Name, which I fucking loved. I think it was amazing. I don't see that film being polarizing in the sense of it motivating people to necessarily accept who they are and come out and join the greater community necessarily. That film is kind of dark and depressing in some ways with a little hint of hope, where I think Love, Simon, without getting into spoilers, has a much more positive and beautiful thing about it that people can relate to. Jim, maybe you disagree with that. You're rolling your eyes.
No, I agree totally, but I agree for different reasons.
Okay.
I think Love, Simon is more relatable because it's about a high school student in a high school setting with friends, whereas, Call Me By Your Name is set in this, he's a rich kid summering in a villa in Italy, and so it's not everybody has that experience.
I'm not knocking Call Me By Your Name. I'm just saying I think Love, Simon is a little more accessible. Probably.
It's relatable, yeah.
Right, absolutely. So, this movie is a big, huge recommend for me. I wouldn't say it necessarily does anything groundbreaking. It's not like I'm watching this movie and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing gay movie ever." But I think it gives us a main character whose journey, I think, whether you're gay or even straight, but into something that not everybody else is. Maybe, I don't know, you really like the Smiths or something, and everyone thinks the Smiths are dumb now. We all have something that makes us different and something that sets us apart. And, the question becomes do you sort of reveal that about yourself and let it bring you together, or do you close yourself off, keep people at arm's length, and be alone? And so I think this movie does a great job of tackling that question. So big recommend from all of us, it sounds like. Guys, are we down for some spoilage on this film?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So spoilers for Love, Simon are officially fair game. This is the part where I awkwardly ramble. If you're listening live, feel free to mute us for 10, ish minutes and then come back for plugs. If you're listening via the magic of digital tape delay, use the time index, skip ahead as needed. Guys, where do you want to start?
I think one of the most compelling things about this film is that central mystery that Jim had mentioned. Amidst the coming out story and the interpersonal relationships, you end up with Simon, who, through this online message board at their school, finds out that someone else in his school has the same secret as him, that he's also gay. And so the two of them, through pseudonyms, start to interact, and develop a friendship, and then even the equivalent of a long distance relationship. They've not, quote unquote, met face to face, but they definitely have feelings for each other through these emails they're exchanging. And I think that central mystery is one of the most compelling parts of the movie, because you're always kind of wondering, and like, I wonder if it's this person. I wonder if it's that person. And I will say this, I don't think it matters if you predict who it is or not. I think like we walked out of it and it's not hard to maybe guess the outcome. It's also not hard to not care about that and just sort of be swept along for the journey. But either way, I think it's compelling to watch this character who is, I think from a subtextual level, doing that thing that a lot of us do when we're first coming out. And that's sort of like trying to read the tea leaves on the people around us. Like, okay, so I know I've got this secret, but maybe so-and-so, like, they ended up also, maybe they're gay. No, maybe I'm not. Should I say something? Should I not? No, I'm afraid of doing that because maybe they're not. But I do kind of have these feelings, maybe not. And so that, granted, in this case, it's really pinpointed through trying to figure out who the person writing the email is. But I think that it does speak to that experience that we all do, which is trying to hone our gaydar or whatever it is at an early age, just so we can find more people from our own tribe.
Yeah, you're going through that experience with him as you're watching the movie, which really propels you like through the narrative. I really liked visually the device of, as he starts guessing, like, ooh, I wonder if it's him. I wonder if he's Blue, which is the nickname for the. And immediately now, when we're reading these new emails, we're seeing this new person on their computer or on their phone. So we're starting to think, oh, maybe it is this person. And then he finds out that it's probably not this person. And he moves on to thinking, okay, I think I figured it out now. And I like that they kept changing the actor out so that you were constantly kind of questioning. But what I also thought was interesting was that it sort of didn't really matter. Like, I half expected them to never tell us who Blue was in the end, because it really didn't matter. I mean, it wouldn't have been as satisfying for sure, but you almost didn't have to, because it was really more about like his experience, right?
But you're absolutely right, Matt. The movie didn't have to, and maybe not a lesser movie, but another movie, maybe a more indie-minded movie, may not have gone there.
Agreed.
Not have gone there and left it like, oh well, the real thrust of this story is how he's come to terms with his life and how he's matured, and that's all cool. Except, you're trying to appeal to a wide audience here,
right?
And I can tell you there was audible like, oh my god, like in that scene in the carnival at the end where we find out who Blue is. Like, people around the theater were like, oh my god, it was pretty awesome. And I think audiences do resonate with that stuff, as cheesy as it might be. Yeah.
There's a reason that formula works, and it's definitely a hallmark of this movie being a Hollywood mainstream, because you get that really satisfying, feel-good, warm, fuzzy ending that you wouldn't, like you said, necessarily get in Tears being independent gay drama.
Yeah, let's face it. Like, there's a trope called "kill your gays," which comes from the idea that in film, literature, comic books, any type of a media, especially kind of from the 90s and early aughts, you could feature queer characters in your media as long as their story was about tragedy and not about joy. And so you would have these stories about, love unrequited or someone dying or a hate crime or something like that, which, don't get me wrong, these are valid things. These are part of the experience as well. But you didn't have experiences of just here is a character going through some things, but who is seeking joy, wants to experience joy, and ultimately gets joy. And that's what we get here. And that, again, that speaks to this being a part of that mainstream experience. That's a very popcorn movie thing to get out of film. And I love that we have our gay popcorn movie now. And that's so fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like you said, the times have changed, right? This isn't a 90s early aught film. I think it's real telling of when this movie came out that he's really the only character that thinks it's weird, you know? Like, he spends the whole movie agonizing over this dark secret, and in reality, like, there's the other gay kid at school who obviously gets like bullied and picked on, turns it right back around because they're a sassy queen. And when he ultimately does come out, the things that everybody are mad about or upset have really nothing at all to do with him being gay. It's all about, you know, lying and not treating your friends correctly and that sort of thing. I think that's such a telling thing in like a modern gay blockbuster movie.
Well, and that resonated so well with me because, you know, from my own coming out process, you know, I was fairly certain that my mom was going to be just fine with it. I was fairly certain that all my friends were going to be okay with it. And this was back in like, you know, 2001. And when I did come out, the issue wasn't, oh, you're gay, you're crazy, that's awful. It was, oh, you've been lying to me your whole life. Or,
right.
Oh,
exactly.
you've been lying to me the last 3 years. We've been in college together.
You couldn't trust me to tell me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And my mom, you know, I love her so much. You know, one of the things she said was, you know, what kind of mom does that make me that you didn't feel like you could tell me? I must be a terrible mom. And I think they're just
we got that in this movie.
We did. And I think the understanding is getting better. But I think straight people would maybe benefit from sort of seeing this movie and looking at the coming out reactions from the other straight people in this film.
I absolutely agree. I think this movie is just as important for the straight people as it is for reaffirming us little gay boys in the audience. You know?
Yes, and especially because it showed a gay character. I mean, this kid had his head screwed on pretty well. Like, he was, you know, so emotionally stable through. I mean, he had his ups and downs and his anxieties. But, you know, he handled the situation very well with his family. Now, he had a very supportive family. We could talk about the dad a little bit because that was an area where I don't know if the film really kind of lived up to my expectation with the dad. Because at one point, he just laughs it off and says, oh, I was joking with all that shit. And, you know, like all the macho bullshit that he was doing, like in the first 3/4 of the movie about, you know, oh, who'd you knock up today? Or, you know, whatever. And at the end, when he confronts his dad and says, you know, I didn't tell you because, you know, I was afraid you'd be disappointed or whatever, you know, all that stuff you said. He says, oh, I was just kidding, you know, and it was kind of fluffed off that way a little bit. A little bit.
I completely disagree with the take on that. I felt like it was a very powerful moment for the dad, and it reminded me of my own dad, like when he realized all the things he'd said my whole life, you know, not even being cognizant when he was saying it of what that impact could be, right? And then finding out that I was gay sort of changed like his whole worldview and got him to re-examine like all these things he'd ever said. And yes, there's maybe the excuse of I was just joking, but I think the dad in this movie, I mean, he's having an emotional breakdown in a way over this. You know what I'm saying? And so
I agree. He said, you know, he said he loved Simon no matter what, and they did have a nice emotional moment. However, everything that he had done up to that point was kind of like passed off as joking.
Here's why
and he never came to terms with that, as far as I'm concerned.
Here's why I felt a little more positively about that. I think that a lot of times we see this type of character, the father character in these movies, is usually this like stiff upper lip, like I'm wearing a camo hat and son, I just can't connect with you unless we're out fishing. Like it's like a very like hyper masculine character that has to go through this thing. And what we have here instead is we're not getting a retread of that. We've got a character you know, we already see he's more in touch with his emotions. He's a lefty, like, you know, like he's the type of person that would be more in tune with like being accepting of his son. But this film shows us that even when you're someone who is probably already naturally predisposed to be sort of pro-gay in your life, you still make these little microaggression statements that you're not even aware of how you say them and the harm that they cause. And I think that what was important about this is we got to see the harm as it was being portrayed to Simon. And for me, I got this feeling that the father was able to, like, he had this sort of like, so again, from my interpretation of what was going on in that final scene, or not the final scene, but the scene with the father, I believe it was he that kind of said I said all of these things all of this time. Like, he was the one that was like, holy shit, like, I've probably been making you feel terrible by saying these things, and I didn't realize the amount of harm I was inflicting. You know, is it maybe a little convenient, and is it a little pat? Maybe, but this is a romantic comedy, and I think that pat / convenience are part of the formula, and it's okay, you know, because I think if we were to have a more thorough deep dive of that, I don't think it would have fit tonally with what this movie was doing otherwise. But I do like that we got this particular growth arc from the father. That said, I think the stuff with Jennifer Garner, she gives a speech there at the end that was just like, that's the bring down the house moment. That like, you know, I'll love you no matter what moment. Like, it was not quite Michael Stuhlbarg and Call Me by Your Name, but it's still got the waterworks flowing.
Yeah, I loved her monologue there at the end. It really spoke to me in my own coming out experience. Like, good or bad, however it went down, that line about "you can exhale now." I was like, oh my god, that describes that feeling perfectly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that was such an incredible way of putting that in. You know, one of the things that she kind of said on top of that was, you know, you can exhale now, but now you can like want all the things that you've always wanted, and that's okay. And as I'm watching that movie, I'm thinking back to my like 16-year-old self coming to the realization that I was gay, but living in a small farm town and having to hide it. And I remember thinking of all the things I wanted, but I would never have. And then I also realized in that moment of watching the movie, and all that time I spent like wishing and hoping, I then realized I have all the things that I was wishing and hoping for when I was 16 years old and afraid to come out. You know, I have a husband, I have a family, I have a life, a great career, wonderful friends. And it was just such a powerful moment for me. And I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it right now, to be like, I was that kid at one point in time and I didn't think it would get better. And you know what? It fucking did. And so I love that this movie kind of just puts that message out there and helps to drive that forward.
God, can you imagine being like a little high school gay right now and getting to see this movie? I don't know. That's all I kept thinking as the credits were rolling. Like, where was this movie when I was in high school? This would have been amazing and so important for me.
Oh yeah, for the coming out experience, the coming to grips with yourself, and even the group that was the most vocally like into this movie were the two straight girls that were sitting next to me. Like, these girls were just living for this movie. Like, every time they revealed a new potential person for Blue, or every time Simon's heart got broke or anything like that, they were, they were just into this movie. And all I could think about was like, can you imagine like 15, 20, 30 years ago, these could very well have been the mean girls. These could have very well been who the fuck is this weirdo?
Not rooting for gay love.
Certainly not rooting for gay love. And again, and that's casting like a big broad paintbrush over traits. We've always had allies and we love our allies. But again, the fact that this was an experience where, like, there were a lot of people who were family in that theater, but there were also a lot of people who were just allies and who were just like, I just want to see a good, sweet romance on screen.
Right.
Like, all of these people got to experience this together from different lenses, from different perspectives, from different backgrounds, but we got to have this shared experience together. And that's cool. That's really cool.
It's also like a shared bonding experience too. Like, now take this with a grain of salt because I didn't hear what they were saying, so I can't confirm. I'm just giving you context. But we're coming out of the movie and we walk outside and we see a knot of people who were in the film with us. One of them is a young man who looks like he's in high school. He's with his parents and what looks like an older brother. And they're all taking turns hugging the young high school kid. And it made me wonder, like, did this family with a gay high school kid go see this movie together? It looked like they were having this very like emotional family moment. And I just thought that was so magical.
Oh my God, I wish I could have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way. Like, you know, I think that there's this thing that happens like I think a lot of people think, especially if there's any straight listeners right now who are listening, you're about to drop some knowledge. A lot of people think that like the coming out process is this like declarative statement. It's Ellen in the airport over the loudspeaker saying I'm gay, and then now it's out of the bag and that's what it is. But coming out is a thing that we have to do damn near every day of our lives. Like, even as adults, we still have these coming out moments where we talk to someone and they're like, oh, are you going to bring your wife to that social event? It's like, well, I'll bring my husband. Yes. You know, it's a thing that never quite ends. And so this particular kid that you mentioned, Brett, he's probably, again, I'm crafting a narrative for him just based on your description, but he's probably already had his coming out moment. But I think what probably would have happened there is that family got to see something that maybe the kids explained or had trouble vocalizing in a way that they never got to experience before. So they got to have that cathartic moment off of a coming out moment that maybe happened earlier that day or 2 weeks ago or even a year ago, who knows? But they still were able to connect with that member of their family in a way that they couldn't without this film. And that's magic.
Indeed. Well, guys, I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but it is fucking late, and I know we all got to work. Right? So we should probably transition into some plugs this week. We look to wrap this mother up. Matt, I just wanted to thank you so much again for joining us on the show tonight. Do us a favor. This is the part of the show, of course, where you can let listeners know there's something cool you think they should check out, but also tell us a little bit about your show, how people can find you and connect with you.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. I know I've been trying to do this with you for a little while. I'm really glad to finally do it, and I'd love to do it again sometime. I kind of co-produce a channel called 30 Something Digital. We do actually a few different shows, but the one that I mainly produce and host is called Cocktail Moment. And every episode we make a different cocktail. Sometimes we get a little history. Sometimes we get a guest who wants to come on and make their favorite. Invariably something gets spilled and something goes horribly wrong. I swear to God, it's not even on purpose at this point. We're just really that clumsy. But yeah, it's 30 Something Digital. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/onlyontSD. We're also on YouTube as 30 Something Digital. I think we're on Instagram. I don't know. Someone else is doing that now, but it's yeah, Cocktail Moment is the show I do, and the channel is 30 Something Digital, and we'd love for you guys to check it out. We have a lot of fun. We're in year 3 now.
That's pretty awesome. Congratulations. That's a lot of cocktails, Matt.
Trust, and I drink all of them, which is not a great idea sometimes.
Oh, goodness.
No, it's a wonderful idea.
Oh, goodness. Well, hey, thank you again so much for being here, Matt. Definitely a pleasure. Guys, Adrian Charlie, speaking of South by friends,
whoa!
Adrian just joined. He says he can't wait to hear this episode. Adrian, unfortunately, you joined during plugs. We're wrapping up. But you know what? Through the magic of YouTube, you can just rewind when we're done recording and watch it from the beginning. Definitely good to see you, Adrian. We totally missed you this year. It was not the same without you, especially after seeing you at Fantastic Fest. I feel like we can't go more than a few months without seeing you, Adrian. So we got to figure something out, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Not sure if we'll get to Fantastic Fest this year, so that's up in the air. Yeah.
We'll have to see. Jim, what have you got for plugs this week?
I just want to plug a little movie I saw. I think I saw it on Netflix. It's called A Futile and Stupid Gesture. It's the story of the genesis and the years of the National Lampoon, starting with the Harvard Lampoon. Doug Kinney and I think it was Harold Beard, the founders of the National Lampoon. Doug Kinney's played by Will Forte. This thing is loaded with comedic actors that we know. And when I was back when I was going to college, the National Lampoon was a huge deal. Like, I was buying this magazine off newsstands in Harvard Square in Boston every month when it came out, because it was the cutting edge of comedy. This was around the time that Saturday Night Live was in its kind of late 70s, early 80s heyday. So many comedians came out of the National Lampoon, and comedic actors. I mean, Chevy Chase, Christopher Guest, John Belushi, all those folks from Saturday Night Live. The movies that they created that spun out of the magazine, of course, Animal House, Caddyshack, National Lampoon's Vacation, and all the vacation movies. This is a pretty fun. I mean, it's not a work of cinematic art, but it's an interesting look, kind of dramatization of those years of the National Lampoon, and kind of it's incredible how these people worked and created the comedy and magazine and movies that they did. The drug use and sex and trouble that they got into with some of the cutting edge comedy that they did for the time was incredible. It's called A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, babe. And Will, how about you? What have you got this week?
Yeah, instead of like one big plug, I've got a couple of minor, like little tiny things to throw out there. First of all, I want to send my love to Gene and Roland. Gene sometimes listens to this program. They're going through a tough time right now, and so just wanted to make sure that they knew I was thinking about them and that I'm in their corner.
Roland.
And wanted to also remind our listeners, check out our website this coming Friday. There will be a couple of written reviews coming up for a few films that I'm going to be pushing through this week, including Steven Soderbergh's Unsane and Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. So keep an eye out for those reviews if you want to figure out if those are worth seeing next weekend. And finally, I want to direct people towards, you mentioned it at the earlier segment of the show, but for anyone that is interested in AGLIF, which is the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival, that is coming up this September. Badges are on sale now at aglif.org. It is here in Austin, Texas, so if you want to dip your pinky toe into the film festival waters, come visit me. I work on this festival, so I'm definitely very invested in it, but I also want to see you, and I want to see you at that festival with me. So it's AGLIF, agliff.org.
All right, awesome. And for me this week, a couple quick things. One, our South by coverage is continuing. If you want to hear more about this year's South by Southwest film, we're going to be doing a couple of things. One, we've got a bonus episode coming out with some interviews with filmmakers from the AGLIF Filmmaker Brunch. That'll be coming out this week. We'll also be hooking up to record another bonus episode where we talk more about some of the different films and experiences we had at South by. So if you like Bobby Miller, you're maybe wondering, like, is this a cool thing? Should I go? You want to know what other movies maybe we liked and what to watch for coming down the pipeline, definitely keep an eye out for that special bonus episode coming out as well. Matt, again, it's been a pleasure. Jim, I miss you so much. Will, I miss you, and Scott and the doggies. Thanks so much for hosting us for 8 wonderful days of film. And guys, next week, Pacific Rim Uprising. I don't know what else we would do.
We will 100% do Pacific Rim Uprising, because fuck yeah.
Oh, God. No. Okay.
Hey, it could be bad, but it's who knows?
Could be great, like the first one.
It could be great, like the first one.
Maybe it will be way better than the first one and redeem the franchise.
They don't get 5.5 stars, but maybe it can be another 5-star.
Oh, God. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.